Good to have you watching, everybody. How many times have you said to your friends that you don't even turn on the news anymore because it only makes you depressed? It's true that there is bad news to tell, but it's also true that the bad news only gets worse if people ignore it. What an honor to have on the show Brooke Goldstein, not one to ignore the world around her. Her documentary that you're watching right now, it's called Making of a Martyr. It looks at the pressure being placed on children in the Middle East to become suicide bombers. If you're interested in this topic and you'd like to meet this woman in person, you can do so tonight at 7 o'clock. We'll talk more about that. But what a great lead-in you were just saying, and it's so true.
Absolutely.
Nothing worse than a news person to hear that the news is so depressing. I turn it off, but you're right. Then be a part of the solution and solve it.
Exactly, but for way too long, not only the mainstream media, but the human rights community and the political community and the legal community have been ignoring one of the most egregious violations happening of all time. It is the indoctrination and recruitment of innocent Muslim children towards violence.
All right, what brought you to this documentary? Why the interest here? It could have been anywhere. Could have been in this country. You're from Canada. Problems there. Why the Middle East?
Well, first of all, I want to stress that this is a problem that is prevalent throughout the world. It is happening both in Islamist countries and it is happening here in the West. Innocent Muslim children are being targeted with violence and they're being recruited to become suicide bombers and child soldiers. And the reason why I focused on this subject, I myself am a human rights attorney, but also because this is the root cause of terrorism. After 9/11, so many people were asking themselves, what did we do to create this hate? That is the wrong question. The right question is, why are millions of Muslim children being taught to hate life and to love death? And if we don't stop this hate education, there is no chance for peace in the Middle East.
Listen, honestly, we're never going to see peace in the Middle East. Let me just ask you this question. How are you going to change a culture? What are you going to do? What is one person, what is that film going to do to change the culture?
Well, first of all, it's not just the film. We have a not-for-profit organization called the Children's Rights Institute, and there's plenty that we can do. First and foremost, we have to stop aiding and abetting this crime. Do you know that the United Nations funds an arm of the United Nations called the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency, and it runs schools in the West Bank that teaches innocent Palestinian children to revere violence and to become suicide bombers. Now, the United States is responsible for up to 80% of UNRWA's budget. So all in all, you can make the argument that our taxpayer dollars are going towards the premeditated murder of Palestinian children. We can stop that. We can also stop, for example, Facebook and iTunes from broadcasting apps and from just glorifying this type of violence.
I mean, we're looking at the documentary and the pictures that we saw there, but once again, I'm going to go back. How do you change a culture? How do you change a lifestyle of thinking this? They hate Jewish people.
Well,
they're going to do everything to destroy that.
Let's be clear. In my experience, what I encountered was a culture of Palestinian parents who did not support child suicide bombing. They were indeed held hostage by a very extreme terrorist element. Look at the people in Gaza. Look at Hamas, what Hamas is doing. The #1 victims of Islamist terrorism are Muslims. What we have to do is empower moderate Muslim voices to speak out against this. But you're right. If this community is not willing to save its own children, then there's not much that we can do besides stop aiding and abetting this crime.
Would you tell us what's on this film? Do you have a success story? Do you have a child who's been saved? This brings back to the problems of human trafficking. We were just so consumed about human trafficking. This is a form of human trafficking with devastating consequences here.
Absolutely, but it's also something that's been systemically and systematically ignored by the human rights community. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Coalition to Stop the Use of Child Soldiers. Not one of these organizations have coherently, consistently condemned the premeditated murder of Muslim children in this manner.
Do you have a success story on this documentary?
You know, there are several opportunities to fund efforts that are attempting to have success stories. For example, there is a school in Pakistan Pakistan in the Swat Valley that we're attempting to raise money for right now. There are children who are escaping the Taliban. The Taliban has recruited and kidnapped and abused and is drugging thousands of Muslim children in Pakistan. Children who have escaped are now given the opportunity to be rehabilitated and rematriculated through the PAC school system. These are individual success stories. We have, for example, a bill right now that's being pushed before the United States Congress to prevent the funding of UNRWA. Canada, the country where I was born, for example, stopped funding UNRWA specifically for this reason. So there are small success stories, and we have to keep working together. And anybody who is interested in helping this initiative should sign up for our mailing list at childrensrightsinstitute.org, and you will be kept informed of both successes and how this phenomenon is spreading.
You know, let me just say, you're right. I was just reading about Egypt and how more women now are serving in government roles. So there may be a turning tide there, but wow, thank goodness for people like you who are just out there trying to make a difference. And I hope everybody will come tonight to see this film. You can hear and meet Brooke Goldstein. Listen to her plea for help. The Jewish Federation of Greater Chattanooga. It is right there on North Terrace. childrensrightsinstitute.org. Your talk, the film, can be seen tonight at 7 o'clock. One word for parents listening right now: how can we, as Americans, educate our own children to look? This is what's going on in the world. This is what's happening to kids your age.
Exactly. We have to speak very frankly. We can't fall into the trap of political correctness. This is an egregious violation against children's rights, and it's completely Islamophobic to ignore it. Because if we continue to ignore it, we're sending the green light to terrorists. They can continue killing their children with impunity. We must speak out about this.
We're at a time. Islamic community in America, are they supporting you? Have they seen this? Are they commenting on this film? Are they helping at all?
I work with a lot of Muslim women and Muslim reformists who have come with me to campuses, who are speaking out against this initiative, but they are targeted with threats of violence. They are shouted down by groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations, who purport to represent the Muslim community. So they're really on the front line.
Your life?
Yes, I do.
And with that, so good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Chattanooga.
Thank you.
We're back with 3+ You. A look at news, good and bad, after this.